off tonight's meeting. As hopefully everyone sees on the box that just popped up, this meeting is now being recorded. Hopefully everyone clicked "I got it" and no one said leave the meeting. I want to welcome everyone back to what we generally refer to as the second half of the year, the season. We took probably for the first time in a very long time, July and August off because we didn't have any pressing issues that needed to come before the board. But I will address what took place over the summer for some of the items that we had to address as an office. But with that, I want to welcome everyone to Community Board 2. I'd like to just kind of review the meeting protocols. This is an executive committee meeting. As part of the requirements for the open meeting law, we cannot exclude anyone from participating and observing the meeting unless we have a reason to go in executive session. But most of the commentary that will take place this evening should be represented by the board officers or either the chair or co-chairs of the respective committees. Should you not be a part of any of the categories that identify you as being an officer, chair, or co-chair, you do have the opportunity to speak and raise comments or concerns during item number 7, which is other community business. I'm sorry, item number 8, which is community forum. Sorry, I correct myself. Item number 8, which is community forum. With that, because we have so many participants on the meeting tonight, which is normal for us to have full attendance, I'll ask the respective chairs during the portion of the agenda where they're assigned to speak to introduce themselves and their respective co-chairs, and then we will continue with our agenda. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or modifications to the agenda? I do have one note. A request was made by Sid Meyer that he had a conflict, and so we may move him up earlier in the agenda under the categories for committee to report. But when we get to that point, I see he's joining now, so we'll make that one modification to have him kick off the committees to report. If there's no objections to that, we'll just move forward. Okay, great. So with that, has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? And with my one modification, are there any objections or corrections to the proposed agenda? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes of June 2021? Great. Are there any noted corrections? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes from June 2021? Raise
Aye.
your hand or either say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, so moved. Now we're up to the chairperson's report. So before we get to the item that's on the agenda about the monthly meeting schedule, I did want to go over a few things that transpired over the summer, just so that we're all on the same page and we level set everyone on what took place. So there are a couple of things that happened over the summer. I think that they're all within the context of a positive, but wanted to just bring everybody up to speed. So we received a notice or letter of resignation from Gustavo. And I think we all expected that Gustavo not going to retire at Community Board 2, which is a good thing. But it's also good for him because he is now a fellow. And Carolyn, remind me, what's the fellow program he's a part of now?
Just know that he's an urban fellow. I don't know the actual program name. But
Right,
he is rotating through city agencies.
Yeah, so part of the EDC, Urban Fellows Placement, he is now a member of that program, which is a significant accomplishment, but I think more importantly, it makes him happy and it aligns with his future goals. So we're happy that he's a part of that program. We all celebrated him and congratulated him on that accomplishment. And I hope that you all, do the same. I'd also wanted to note that because of his vacancy, we now have 2 positions that will be posted. The position of district manager and the position of think it was office assistant or community board associate is the title.
Community assistant.
Right, community assistant. So those two positions will be posted for applicants in the very short coming future. So hopefully by the end of October, those positions will be posted, barring any additional red tape. And then the Finance and Personnel Committee will go through the process of conducting the interviews. So we will soon be in a position to have a fully staffed office. Taya and Caroline, or Caroline and Taya, have been leading the efforts to keep the office maintained. And I hope for at least the executive committee and participants who are on the phone who are not part of the executive committee, you don't see much of a degradation in the service from the office. Obviously with two people, there's only so much they can handle. But I for one, have been engaged with the office and think that things are running smoothly, given the fact that we have two people. There may be some minor things that you may be accustomed to as chairs and co-chairs, and even for that, board members who are on the phone. But hopefully those are things that are just minor. And if you experience any delays or any degradation in service, please reach out to me, send me an email, give me a call. And then the three of us will try to get it resolved until we get a fully staffed office. But I want to commend both of the leaders and ladies who represent the office for doing a good job. The other thing I wanted to mention is that there was a push, as most of you know, to have meetings go back to in-person, and a host of chairpersons and district managers and acting district managers and assistant district managers got together, and we had a meeting with Borough Hall, and we were very vocal and uniformed in that there was really no justification why we couldn't continue in our minds proceeding with virtual meetings. And so we wrote a letter collectively with all of us, and I signed on as a signatory to that letter to the governor's office. And I'm happy to say that the governor has given an extension to reconsider. And we know that the extension lasts until January of 2022. We've already had some preliminary discussions to see how we get the second round of that letter drafted so that it can continue to move forward. But we think that right now, virtual meetings seem to be successful, and there's really no reason why we shouldn't continue to move forward with that. I know that there's been a lot of talk of some form of a hybrid meeting, a little in person, a little virtual. But I think if the whole goal is to be convenient and accessible for the community we serve, and given that the fact remains we're not clearly out of the pandemic yet, I think it's wise to do what's in best interest for the community. And I think, we want to applaud the governor's office for reconsidering and at least for now, allowing the virtual meetings to continue to move forward. So just wanted to update you all on that. As you probably well know, but wanted to give you a little more insight if you didn't have it. Two more things I wanted to mention. Some of the committees have new members. I ask that you welcome your new members, give them the platform to be heard, listen to what they have to say, and encourage their participation and engagement. It's not a successful committee unless everyone is allowed to participate. So I ask that you do that. And then the last thing I want to mention is please be on the lookout for public hearings on congestion pricing. I think it's very important for everyone to be heard and engage about congestion pricing. The same way Community Board 2 has galvanized around other issues that are important and speak about equity and inclusion for our respective community, I think the same has to take place for congestion pricing. And I encourage each of you to be aware of that, participate if your time allows. And I know the office has done a great job and continues a good job of getting that information out, even as Taya is doing right now in the chat. So for those of you who've had a chance to see the chat, the links for the information is there, but it's important to speak up and have your voice heard. And so let's do that if we can. So those are my ad hoc comments I wanted to mention under the chairperson's report. And now, Taya, if you would you bring up this proposed monthly committee meeting schedule? I know we talked about this in our June meeting. We just kind of gave everybody a rough overview. Now that we're back in session, I wanted to have this gain a little more traction. I wanted to ask each of the chairs and co-chairs for the committees that are listed here to look at this, give us some thought. Let's really see how we can implement this and make the schedule work. There's a certain amount of logic that went into why we are making this recommendation. Some of it is to coincide with some of the calendar items that exist from the agencies that we recommend to. Other aspects of it is to coincide with the timing of our general meeting and our executive committee meeting, so that it makes sense to have actions take place where we don't really miss a clock, so to speak, or miss a window. It's really meant to be thoughtful. As you all know, I'm a person who I don't always subscribe to the notion of, well, we've always done it that way. I think if there's a way to do it better and it's more inclusive and it's helpful, we should take a look at it. I'm not suggesting that it has to be this way. I don't want anybody to think that we're taking a hard, look at this and putting that, doing things with a fist. But I really would love for everyone to give better consideration to this. And at the outset, what should jump out to you is that generally we don't have meetings taking place on Mondays or Fridays. Essentially, the meetings would take place through a very compact Tuesday through Thursday schedule. And if that works for the chairs and co-chairs, and especially in this case, executive committee, I think we can move things in a different way. But let me pause for a minute. I know I've said a lot, and let me see if there's any initial feedback or thoughts. And I'll start with Jessica.
Thanks, Lenny. I have a question that I think echoes something Brandon mentioned before. Brandon, I'm sorry for putting words in your mouth. Can I just ask for clarification on the general meeting, for example? Is that saying third Thursday of the month, or is it potentially also the fourth Thursday of a month? It says that the general meeting would be the final meeting each month.
So right now we're proposing this to be the third Thursday of the month.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, any adverse reactions from committee chairs or co-chairs? If you think it's just horrible, you can put that in the chat too. Just anything that you feel is good. I will say, yes.
Okay, when would this go into effect? Just out of curiosity, if we vote on it today and we decide that this is the schedule we'd like to do, when would that actually go into effect?
We can discuss that. This can be a collective conversation. It can go in effect, November. It can go in effect in January. I'm flexible there. I think we need to give it some time to make sure that two things we need to be mindful of, and this is really more for the office, but we all should be mindful of this. I think we need to make sure that we can adjust our respective calendars so that it works. I think you all need to take the time to speak to the members of your committee to make sure that their calendars can support this, because it's not just about the exec committee, it's really about the entire board. Number two, we need to take into account some level of what things would look like if we come out of a virtual environment, in which case the office would need to find space for us to meet. One of the things that I've suggested, just while I'm on the topic, is that if we do have to come out of a virtual environment, while it has been our practice to move our meetings around the district, what makes that complicated is having a space large enough to social distance, having a space large enough that will accommodate not only the board members being socially distanced, but the community, but also what it takes to have safety protocols, whether it means checking temperature, providing masks, all the things that are required for the way our lives have changed since 2020. Those are things that we need to take into consideration. While that is secondary to this conversation, I still want time for each of the chairs and co-chairs to take this back to the committees and get feedback. So it's very realistic that from my calendar perspective, we're already in October. So let's put October aside. I don't know if we want to implement it during November or December. It may be more plausible to do it in January, but just wanted to get feedback on that.
If I could just ask one question, similar to the question I asked last time. if we are starting a month like the month of September, where the first day of the month is September 1st, then the executive committee meeting will be September 7th, the first Tuesday of that month. But after the HES and Transportation and Public Safety Committee meeting, for example.
Yeah, on this relative schedule, that's correct.
Okay. That makes sense. I just felt for timing.
Only for landmark land use, I don't think it's a big deal going from the third Wednesday to the second Wednesday. If we do come out of a virtual environment and go into a real place, just bear in mind for our use that whatever places you get has to have some kind of audio visual capacity, since we're very dependent upon seeing the proposals. We did it, or when we were at NYU with various, they had a projector and boards and things. We've been using the computer here, but now if we go back to virtual, go back to real world, wherever place we get also has to have that ability to see the presentations from the presenters.
Carlton, you're absolutely correct. And to be fair, or just even amplify your message, let me say it that way, to amplify your point a bit, that challenge is going to exist pretty much for all the committees, right? All the committees at some point have projections, have things that they need to illustrate, things that they need to do. And then, we are beholden to ADA compliance. So there are things that we have to do. That's why, those aspects become a little more challenging now than probably we've had in the past for various reasons, which case it also limits the number of places you can have meetings, so that where we used to, again, to repeat, the way we would have a normal model where we would frequently spread meetings throughout the district so that everyone can have a chance to participate at the committee and executive board and general body meetings. That may be limited a bit, but we'll do our best to make sure that the community isn't left out and whatever changes are required to meet these goals.
Hi, this is Barbara. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. The executive committee, I love the new schedule, but does the executive committee meeting need to be closer in time to the general meeting? Or when this way, will we be discussing what happens at the general meeting after the executive meeting rather than before?
Well, so some of the thought behind that is a lot of times you would have items that would come out of the committees brought to executive committee. In many cases, it would either lend to things like, well, I just reported at the general body, so I have nothing to report. Or if there's something that requires action, you take action on it, but then the general body would find it as kind of a minutes or something that was in the, kind of a cliff note. I think the timing of this allows us to kick things off with the exec committee. Those items can be addressed. It would definitely allow for the committees to be able to discuss those items. And then it would allow us to, share it in more totality and more of a conclusive way with the general body meeting.
Great.
And then amplifying that message is what Taya put in the chat. So there's a kind of a distance between when the committees meet for various reasons that we've observed, whether it be driven by agency requirements or things that just make better efficiency within the community board.
That's great. And just want to remind people, if they're not speaking, to mute. Thanks.
Hi, this is Betty. I'd like to say a few words. Hello? Do people
Go ahead,
hear me?
Betty.
Hi, okay. So I applaud this schedule. It seems very well thought out. And I want to also mention that for our committee, Youth Education and Cultural Affairs, it allows us to meet in November and December, which, as you know, in the past, we didn't because of Thanksgiving and Christmas. So it will help make us an even stronger committee.
Yeah,
Thank
we took that into consideration too. I forgot to mention that it does take into affect the days that you most frequently have city holidays, which generally happen on Mondays, and then just the cultural holidays that happen, like Christmas, Thanksgiving, religious holidays that we celebrate. So there's a lot of thought that went into this suggestion and recommendation. But again, I do want to be inclusive and make sure that your respective committee members and maybe some of the co-chairs that are not on the call this evening have a chance to apply and adjust their schedules accordingly.
Well, I think this is great, and I did mention it to my committee. And aside from one member with childcare issues and so on, it's absolutely fine.
All right, great. So here's what I want to do. And if there's anybody who thinks that what I'm about to recommend isn't appropriate, let's speak up. What I'd like to do is take this proposal that Taya has put up on the screen. I think everyone should have a copy. Allow for the committee chairs and co-chairs to circulate that amongst their committees. Let's get feedback, and then at the next meeting, let's vote on it. Right? I think it's probably best to get the feedback first, as opposed to voting now. So this is what we're going to move forward with. I ask that everyone to give feedback and then be prepared for this to be a voting item at our next exec committee meeting.
I have one comment, Irene.
Sure.
I'm concerned that with the big separation between the executive board and the general meeting, if we have a ULURP item, which has to go to the full board, and it's on a time limited schedule, would a ULURP come to the general board before having gone to the executive board?
Well, so, those instances happen now, and we generally work around those. So the items that require us to do our business are not necessarily impacted by a change in the relative date, right? Those issues have always arisen, and they will. Generally, we have a clock that we need to work on. And so if we follow this flow, there's usually enough time within the clock for the committees to meet appropriately and not be rushed. As is the case today, this proposal aside, if there are things that require an immediate response, we either address it as that committee, or the office does a great job of communicating with the agency, explaining the situation. An exception is made for us to address it, and then we move forward. So we have processes in place today to address those. I don't think the change in schedule should cause any degradation to that, but your point is well taken. Any other comments before we move on? Fantastic. Thank you. So let me just continue with the agenda as proposed and go to committees for action. So Mr. Gordon.
Okay, thank you, everybody. On behalf of my co-chairs, Dorothy Christoffen and Irene Jenner, I'm Colton Gordon for land use and landmarks. We have two items which were both approved by committee, 8-0 unanimously. The first one is 295 and 297 Hicks Street in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. Basically, this is a new building on a vacant, I think, former parking lot on Hicks down by State Street. And we like the proposal that was given by the architects for this particular, well, these two mid-size 4 to 5 story buildings at that, and on that block. They're going to use a lot of brick windows, glass for the windows, of course. Well built with steel, and it's very nicely, it blends in with the community, although it's still has modern elements. It looked very good. They will, of course, because it's they're going to have a garage that goes down towards the basement. Have a garage entrance for the use of the people living in there. They also will be installing a solar panels up at the roof. Again, that's very nicely done. We liked it. We think it fits in. Brooklyn Heights, I think, had no problem with it, and we approved it 8-0. The second one is 53 Pearl Street in the Dumbo Historic District. On this one, It's in one of the typical older buildings. And they had what they want to do is to try to relocate a entrance, or actually add entrances. They'll have, instead of one entrance with a long ramp for people who are disabled, they'll have 2 entrances. There'll be a smaller set of steps at the center. They'll redo the front so it'll look a little bit, it'll look nicer. And then there's going to be a second entrance for those who use the ramp. They take the ramp off the street and they're going to actually build so you can say an interior ramp or an interior rising walkway. They'll go from the street. You open the door, you go in. So if you want to use the ramp, you just open the door. It's on the side. It's at the corner of the building. And you walk in and you walk up the ramp into the building itself. So and we like the way it looked. Karen Johnson from Dumbo neighborhood liked it. It looks good. It diminishes some of the front, so that it opens up a little area in the, for walking on the street. And we also proved that one 8-0. And we ask for your support and approval on both items.
Thank you, Carlton. So what I'd like to do, given that this isn't a lengthy agenda for land use, I like to take these separately. And so do these one at a time. And so what I'd like to do is entertain a motion for the committee's recommendation for, I'm just gonna say, and a second, Ms. Freibush. Any discussion on the motion? All right, maybe everybody didn't hear me. Any discussion on the motion? Wow, that's amazing.
Singletary.
I knew it. Okay, there we go.
He asked twice, so.
Yeah, it's all right.
I agreed to this, but only because I felt since it was a new building, they had the right to build as they wish.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor by the sign of raising your hand or yelling aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, raise your hand or make a motion that you oppose. Any abstentions? So moved.
I'm sorry, I think maybe your screen froze, Barbara. I didn't see what your vote was.
It froze again.
It froze
Barbara,
again.
raise your hand if you were for it, either with a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you were against it. She froze again.
Barbara, maybe you
Barbara.
can chat it.
Barbara, if it's easier, maybe you could put it in the chat because you froze.
Thanks, Barbara. Sorry to call you out.
That's all right. Let's see what happens. Oh,
Yes.
she says yes. Okay, good.
Cool. All
Thanks,
right.
Barbara. All right.
Thank you.
Next item, 53 Pearl Street. I entertain a motion to accept the committee's recommendation.
So moved.
Mr. Meyer, second. Mr. Jordan, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand, like mention aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed?
Barbara
Mr. Gordon,
abstained.
Mr. Gordon opposed.
Yeah.
Is that right, Carlton?
No, opposite.
Okay, I got you. So
I'm
you
in
put your hand
favor.
down. I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no
Okay.
opposed. And I see Barbara mentioned in the chat, she abstains. Is that
Yes,
correct?
abstain.
Just because that count match out? Okay, great.
That works.
So moved. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Committees to report. As I mentioned earlier, Mr. Meyer asked if he could be moved up first. He has a conflict. So Sid, Transportation and Public Safety.
Well, good evening, everyone. We had an interesting meeting and an interesting summer. As you know, the bike lane that we approved a while back has been now opened. We had a presentation on the BQE cantilever and what the DOT is doing. The mayor announced that they're making it 2 lanes for the area under the bridge. In fact, I drove, and they did that over the summer, and I got caught a couple traffic jams, which I had no one to blame but myself. So that has been implemented. When I drove over the bridge just now, because I came back from seeing my grandkids, that on the BQE down below, I looked down and I saw no trucks, which was really very unusual. Traffic has been fairly high. There have been issues with people getting used to the new traffic patterns. There has the DOT is continuing to monitor that. They're also looking at what construction they will need to do to make it so that it will be sustainable for some period of time before they also then go into looking how to redesign the entire BQE corridor. And that they've hired consultants for and should start shortly. So it was an interesting meeting about the BQE. The problems still exist. They haven't been solved.
Sid, I think you froze up, or maybe you didn't. Maybe.
No, I don't know. I can see you. Can you hear me? It's not me that's frozen. I can see you. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. Okay.
All right. So so we have the BQE. The DOT came back and they talked to us about the Navy Street a bike lane that we had approved with changes. They've rejected our changes and they're going ahead with the bike lane as they've proposed, which is a north-south bike lane without a parking area to protect the bikers. The people from Ingersoll and the other in Farragut were very upset about DOT not coming back and talking to them. We had asked the DOT they did speak to us before they made the announcement, and they said that we asked them if we could invite the people from Ingersoll and Farragut. They said no, they would do it separately, and the people from Ingersoll and Farragut complained that they were not consulted, and the DOT is going ahead with the plans as originally presented. It was an interesting meeting about all these things. There will be we're still pressing MTA on the York Street station redesign, but there was, as you know, there was a presser by the local politicals trying to get the MTA to issue the report and come up with a better entrance or a second entrance, an ADA compliant entrance. And it has not yet been issued. And I'm told the MTA is working on it, but they have no date that it will be issued. Even though they had promised to us last year we would have it in the summer or in the summer. It's now the fall and we still don't have it. And frankly, that's the end of my report. If anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to try to answer them.
Thanks, Sid. I appreciate that. Any questions from committee chairs or co-chairs?
This is Carlton. Just wanted to point out, if you can get Patch, which is online, they have a little article on it. Just what you were talking about on the York Street F train. So you might want to take a look at it.
I did look at it. It doesn't tell me anything, unfortunately, other than anything more than where we are. You know, the MTA still has not finished their report.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to I'm going to my next event.
All right.
Have a nice
Excuse me?
have a nice evening, everyone.
May I interrupt, Sid, before you go?
Yes, Sid.
Go ahead.
Open restaurants, are you not going to report on that?
Well, you know, we also, first of all, thank you, you know, Caroline, for reminding me. We had a very long discussion about open restaurants on the proposal for the city to amend the land use so that they will be able to be in other areas. The committee and there was a vote to approve the recommendation. The approval, it failed. So the committee but I don't know if the land use committee is going to opine on this. But the committee and the vote to approve the DOT taking over the open streets and the issue of the amendments to the zoning text failed.
Yeah, Sid, I'm not sure that this would be something that we would have land use opine on. I think if anything, it may be helpful if we have a letter come from the community board, right, collectively. But to pull it out to a committee, I'm not sure, if that's helpful, but we'll see about maybe having a response from the overall board to that.
Well, the main issues people raised were obviously about the no supervision of the building, rats and trash, and the fact that this was sort of haphazard, and the committee voted. I forget the exact vote, but the vote to approve what the planning had asked us to approve went down. I think it was 4 in favor, 5 or 6 against, and 2 abstentions. Is that correct, Caroline? Carol, is that correct?
Sorry about that. 3 were in favor of it, 4 were opposed, and 2 abstained.
Okay.
All right. So like I said, we'll I want to think about what's the best way to respond. I'm not sure if, at least my knee-jerk reaction isn't to pass it to another committee, but maybe it comes as a community board response. But more to come there.
I've seen the responses of some of the other community boards, and most of the other community boards and I think I saw about 4 or 5 of them approved it with restriction, with conditions. The conditions being that while this is a zoning text amendment, the actual plan that DOT, because it's transferring it to DOT, the actual plan that DOT comes up with should be subject to both comment and public hearings, so that people would have a chance to comment on it. And the other community board also raised the issues about the trash, the noise, the same sort of kind of quality of life issues that the people at the committee raised.
Okay, so thanks for that. Carolyn has just alerted us that there's a race against the clock. Sand is flowing through that hourglass, so we'll make a decision quickly.
Okay, thank you. I've got to go. I have a good evening, everyone, and be well.
Thanks, Sid.
You too, Sid.
Next committee to report, economic development and employment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, my co-chair Denise Peterson is not present right now, but she's definitely a person that I rely on certain topics. We had our meeting and we discussed the district statement of needs. We went into detail about that, and we basically came up with 11 items that we felt were specific to Economic Development and Employment Committee, that we will basically come out with a final determination as far as how we're going to actually address these issues so that they can actually be proposed in such a way that they can be approved and financed. In the past, that hasn't been a situation. The agencies have basically said no to it because it wasn't specific enough or it was too general. So we're going to basically work on that to make sure it's specific, can be funded, and we know what agencies to apply it to. In addition to that, we came up with about 6 other items that we feel were not necessarily in the realm of economic development and employment, but to other committees. Those items were, for instance, with HES. We felt that because of COVID, there's a lot of issues that small businesses were encountering because of situations such as homelessness. Yeah, a lot of homeless issues with homeless people basically either using facilities within the establishments for restroom facilities and stuff like that, or basically hanging around outside of their premises, sleeping on the stairs, so forth and so on. Also, there's an issue with substance abuse. We felt that's something else that could also address because of COVID. And also mental health issues. There's a lot of mental health issues currently right now. And we felt that was something that was in our purview, but something that what Hess would take a look at, and we'd be more than happy to give some feedback on that also. And as far as transportation, we felt that there were some traffic issues. Some of the businesses around Flatbush Avenue, Atlantic Avenue, and Pacific, because of the traffic issues there, it was affecting the businesses, okay, for parking and a whole bunch of other items. And we felt that was an item that should go in front of transportation and public safety, because we felt that that was a situation that it affects the actual businesses, but the actual transportation aspect of it is something that should go in front of that committee. In addition to that, and also for Hess and land use, we're looking at the homeless issue. A lot of the homeless shelters are now being overrun or actually are not at full capacity. The hotels have now shut down. They're now basically pushing the people out into the street, and there's no facilities for them to go to. So we felt that was something that land use could take a look at for vacant properties that could be converted over, and also Hess for obvious reasons. Okay. Also, as far as land use, we're also looking at city rental assistance. Okay, currently right now, a lot of the residents have not received rental assistance. There's a ton of funds out there that have not been distributed, millions and millions of dollars. And there might be something that the land use committee might want to take a look at to actually see how we can actually expedite those funds. Because at this point in time, individuals are no longer receiving additional aid from the city, state, or federal. And they're now looking at being evicted. So that's something we felt that the land use committee should take a look at. And finally, there's one more for land use, because you don't have enough on your agenda. Okay, we're also looking at NYCHA. Currently, right now, there's a lot of NYCHA properties that could be also used for affordable housing, okay, that have vacancies. And we think that NYCHA should start taking a look at that and actually see if we can actually start taking some of those individuals who are homeless with families, okay, can actually start moving into NYCHA vacancies. Okay, so that's some of the things we're looking at. One of the items that we were also looking at were small businesses. We're looking at the fact that a lot of small businesses, there's a lot of red tape for them to actually get up and running. And we're going to have right now the New York City Small Business Services come to us and actually talk to us about their Quick Start program, which directly discusses how to cut the red tape so that small businesses can get started as quickly as possible without having to basically deal with regulations and lawyers and everything else. So that's going to be in front of our committee next month. And that's my report.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate the report. I'm not sure the statement of district needs was historically intended for you to make work for other committees, but I appreciate the thoroughness that you and your committee applied to the statement of district needs. And if for some reason, next time you and one of the representatives of the Hess committee see each other and you trip, I'll promise to look the other way.
Sir, if the other committee chairs would want us to more than happily do their work for them, I'm happy to step up and do it.
All of that was said in good humor and fun. Let me just also add that related to Bill's point about the homelessness, I had a conversation with Senator Jabari Brisport, and the senator was able to, one of my conversations with him was to raise a concern around the issue of homelessness within our district. And the senator was receptive, and he and I have had constant back and forth dialogue about the topic. And he was able to share with me a notice from the Department of Social Services, Human Resource Administration, specifically the Department of Homeless Services, that there's an anticipated shelter opening at 1 Hoy Street, and that is going to have a population of a capacity of 181 single adults, and it is anticipated to open in the spring of 2022. Now, it doesn't specifically say when during the time period of spring, but I think, this is clearly a step in the right direction. And I, want to thank Senator Brisport for, keeping Community Board 2 involved. And let's see if we can put this on the radar for the HES committee and see if we can get more detail around this. And if need be, perhaps the office would be, Carol Ann, maybe it's appropriate if we can reach out to Commissioner Banks and see if he's available for maybe the next meeting or thereafter, where we can get some more detail on the shelter. Maybe that's appropriate. Unless you already have it. You may already have that.
Yes, there'll be 2 shelters, and they're currently in the process of scheduling a briefing for us.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Yeah, I just wanted to add that. So before I move on, any questions from Mr. Flanoy and the report he gave for his committee?
Bill, on the NYCHA thing, traditionally, we think of, or I always thought of NYCHA housing as almost really difficult to get into because almost every unit has been occupied. From what you're now saying is that there seems to be a number of vacancies that are just sitting there. Is that information that you have, or you've received that the vacancies have gone up in NYCHA housing? I guess not just in general, but and specifically around our downtown Brooklyn NYCHA buildings.
It's my understanding that 4 of the NYCHA complexes have vacancies now, and that we might be able to look into those. Okay, I'm not talking large blocks of vacancies, but anything can help. Any little bit can help.
I think we should talk. Well, I'll bring it up at our next, one of the things I'll bring up in the chair's report. And then you and I can talk about it at the landmark land use meeting.
It's actually on the, if you look actually on our board, our SDNR, if you look on there, we actually have mentioned exactly where those locations are.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions for Bill?
Yeah, I have a question. The units that are empty, are they habitable? It's my understanding that some units are left empty because there's mold and other aspects that need remediation.
It may be a situation where they need remediation, which is even another reason why they should be done as quickly as possible.
Good.
Any other questions for Bill?
I kind of feel obligated to respond to a couple of points that Bill made, but mainly I just want to say, Bill, thank you for your interest in matters of health and social services. We are very receptive to your thoughts, and it would be great if you could drop the board office or somebody or me an email with the list of the items that you'd like us to consider. We may have some district needs items already that sort of hit at the points that you get, but it would be great if we could understand it and work together with you in that regard. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that, and be happy to touch base with you separately. I've had several conversations with other people interested in our district needs, and I'm particularly proud of what we're going to produce, but I'm going to leave that for our next meeting when we discuss it in detail.
Mr. Smith, I believe we both know one of my committee members is more than happy to help you out.
Absolutely, yes. We're consider ourselves very lucky to have her attend our meetings.
Any other questions for Bill? Great. Thank you, Bill, for the report. Moving along to the Health, Environment, and Social Services Committee, Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much, and good to see everybody this evening. So we had a very abbreviated meeting on September the 1st. It was an in-person meeting, and really a credit to the board office and to the folks over at City Point for putting forth the effort to set up the environment. It was unfortunately the day before the governor issued the executive order, so we didn't get spared from that circumstance. And it was amidst a major storm that befell our city. So people, the folks who trekked out to it really engaged in heroism, and I commend both them as well as the other folks who attended remotely and had their feelings and points of view. We had a presentation from the Center for Community Alternatives. In many ways, it's a sign that there are some aspects of our society that may be getting back to normal. It's been about 1.5 years since we've seen one of these kinds of presentations where you have one of these providers of services, treatment services, seek to expand their services. We approved their request, and the request is going to be discussed at the general board meeting later this week. So I'll leave many of the details for that. But other than that, we just had a really short meeting and talked about what we were going to do for the year. We're going to have, I know we have a lot of hot button issues between homelessness and COVID, but I really want to emphasize that climate change is going to be a big emphasis for our committee this year, because it really is the issue that often gets pushed to the side. And whatever we can do as a committee to discuss pertinent issues related to that, we're going to try to do that. So our next meeting at the beginning of October will be focused on storm resilience and as well as on the recovery possibilities that are associated with our energy providers. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion. I think it'll be a great opportunity for us to connect on a pertinent issue of environment. And I think that the committee members are going to be very interested in it too. And we'll of course confirm our district needs. We have a breadth of these needs that go from issues of health to sanitation to social services, homelessness. And I think they actually hit several of the points that Bill brought up, but I'd be anxious to see some of the details too. That's it for me, but thanks everyone. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? Bill?
Yes, Mr. Smith, I was kind of curious about something. Based on the fact that we had that flood that was substantial, I mean, to say the least, on the day of your meeting, as a matter of fact, I noticed that there was substantial flooding, okay, throughout all of the boroughs. In some cases, people lost power because of flooding, even though there wasn't any tides. Okay, is there anything we can do as taking a look again at this? Because as far as the damage that was done, both to residences and also the businesses, that was substantial. You're addressing basically sewerage issues, drainage, the whole 9 yards. If you're looking at the piece that's looking at environmental impact of climate change, I think as far as we're concerned, to actually, drill down on exactly what we should look at as far as climate change affecting our borough, okay, or our district. I think that's what we should really focus on more than anything else. I don't know how you feel about that.
Thanks for that, Bill. No, of course, no. That's a great point, and I think it's something that we will be excited to look at in the next year as we explore different opportunities to improve on these situations. I think one of the great things we can do as a community board is if we're aware of specific locations where there's flooding or issues that are taking place, then we can document, report those specific issues and follow up with the appropriate agencies. Because at times, one thing I've noticed is just that given where a particular issue occurs, there may be a problem or that corresponds to like Department of Transportation in one respect or DEP in another respect. And knowing where the solution is often a good way to respond to that problem. I'm certainly open to any ideas on more big picture ideas for how to address that as a major citywide issue. And I think that our committee will be open to discussing that more as the year goes on too.
Yeah. One of the other items that is also problematic is flood insurance.
So Bill, let me jump in. This is not meant to be a committee meeting. Just
That's right, sir.
so I know you got a host of ideas. Save them and join the next meeting. Any other questions for Mr. Smith?
I
Betty?
do. Hi, Mr. Smith knows this is my thing these days, but curbside collection of fruit and vegetable scraps known as brown bin collection. It's coming in slowly. It will come in. It's not mandatory. I think we need, I've done outreach myself with the outreach from DSNY, et cetera, and in community blogs. But I think this is something we can have a voice in making sure that the next district that gets service for the brown bin collection would be CB2. Apparently CB6 is the first in line to receive this. The DSNY is gradually implementing this as opposed to having one day when everybody does it. So I think we need to be active in this. There are different issues for small, like row houses, 1 to 4 family houses. There are different issues for apartment buildings and for NYCHA. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. So wait, let me just reset the dial here. When the committees give their reports and I ask for questions, I'm asking for questions on things that were reported on. I'm not looking for new suggestions. I'm not looking for any new ideas. I know this is a very smart executive committee and by nature and extension a smart community board. That's why I encourage you to attend the meetings. To have Mr. Smith or any other chair for that matter address issues that are new to them, I think kind of, doesn't balance out the intent of the question and the report that they gave. So as we go into the next, I think 1 report or 2 reports, let's have questions that relate to the topics that are being presented. And should each of you as chairs and co-chairs have wonderful ideas, which you always do, maybe you address the co-chair offline or attend the committee meeting. But to this point, thank you all for your comments. I appreciate that. Any other questions for Mr. Smith on what he reported?
He's done a great job.
Hearing none, we'll move forward to Finance and Personnel, Mr. Leonard Jordan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Singletary. Hi, everybody. So the Finance and Personnel Committee met on Thursdays, last Thursday, September 23rd. I'll give you some of the highlights. The committee received and agreed on a posting on the vacancies I think Mr. Singletary had mentioned for the full-time position of district manager and the part-time position of community assistant. After we receive salary verifications from OMB and Borough Hall, the plan is to have postings issued by the end of the month, or let's say the end of this week, which really would be October 1st. But the committee's next scheduled meeting is November 18th. However, during the meeting that we had last week, the committee agreed to meet on October 28th in order to determine and schedule candidate interviews. Because by that time, I think we have to have the posting up for about 21 days before we can, and if we have a significant amount of candidates, which we hope we will, we'll start to schedule interviews for those 2 positions. The committee also reviewed our budget reconciliation, future expenses, Zoom and technology contracts that we have up, that are coming up. Pardon me. And then finally, the committee had decided at our May meeting that we were going to return the Pitney Bowes meter and not renew the Pitney Bowes contract. So if you notice, I don't know if you remember or not, but during our budget presentations, we have not put any more money into that. We had we had a significant amount of money that was already there that we hadn't used for a long period of time. And since our mailing requirements have diminished significantly over the past few years, we figured it was best, the few mailings that we do, we would just get stamps from the post office and, do it that way rather than have a postage meter. So we are anticipating a check, that we might have gotten this credit already, but we had about $3,400 approximately. I don't know I don't have the exact amount which will be added to our budget, our FY's fiscal year 2021 budget, when we receive that, which should be within the next week or two, if we haven't gotten it already. I don't know, Caroline, has that come in yet?
Yes, it arrived at the end of last week.
Oh, it did. Okay. And do you know what the exact amount is?
Unfortunately, I don't remember, but it is
Okay.
about 3,400.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And that's about it for me. I'm open for any questions.
Great. Thank you, Lenny, for a great
Thank you.
report. Appreciate that. Next on the agenda, we have Parks and Recreation, Barbara Zala-Granger.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to speak quickly because my Spectrum connection is not the best. My co-chair is Andrew Lastowski. We met last week. We had a very spirited meeting. We did spend quite a bit of time talking about district needs. And I will tell you, as a result of that meeting, I'm delighted to say that many more of our committee members put in statements in the form for the district office. So you'll be seeing those. We had a presentation from Hannah Basio, who is the Senior Outreach Coordinator for us from Partnership for Parks. She's new working with us on that. And a Partnership for Parks is this unique private public group from the City Parks Foundation and the Parks Department. And they work closely with friends groups, and they give a lot of support to the friends groups. And as Hannah said, behind most thriving parks is a friends group. So please keep that in mind. We also
Ms. Zala-Granger, we've lost your vocal. Barbara, are you still dialed in by phone by any chance?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Barbara, we can hear you now.
All right, sorry about that. So there seems to be a lot of interest in our district at the moment for dog runs, and part of it may be related to the fact that a lot more people have dogs now, acquired them during the pandemic. So one of our members is very interested in creating a dog run at University Place. So we heard from him. He's been very proactive and has started putting together a friends group on that. And those were the major issues that we discussed at the meeting. Any questions?
Thank you, Barbara. Any questions for Barbara on what she was just reported? Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate the report. Next, Youth Education and Cultural Affairs, Betty Fibush.
Hi, thank you. My co-chair is Dorothea Thompson Manning. I don't see her on the screen. If she's there, hi. So she's our co-chair. And I'm happy to report that this month we have a new member who's a youth member who goes to a public high school, 12th grade. So we're very excited. So on the subject of youth members, we have a proposal which will be voted in full in the full meeting to have a youth council. So as everybody knows, we're considered a city agency. Many city agencies, as well as nonprofits, do have youth councils that participate, advise, and it helps the young person to be involved more deeply in an area of community concern. It helps civic engagement because as they get older, they see the venues for people's voice in the community. So we have a proposal. We've been working toward more youth members for many years. I must say we haven't been as successful as we'd like. So to have a youth council, it would make the experience more robust for the young people, and it would help the committee and the full board, because the students would be expected to look into an issue, study it, and make a report. So it would help us as well. So we propose to do broad outreach to high schools and colleges in the area. We propose to look at the resumes of the students who are applying and vet them and approve 4 to 6. Now, they would not have voting on the committees or the board. They would be considered members of the youth council. They would be expected to come to every meeting of our committee, as well as one meeting of a committee of their choice, because maybe they're interested in bicycle transportation or something in the area of parks or health or whatnot. And then they would work on a proposal that they could present. So, are there any questions?
Thank you, Betty. Any questions for Betty on what she reported? Yes, Bill?
Betty, would they get credit for doing that type of work?
That's up to their school. Some schools have service requirements, community requirements. And if the young person wanted to do this and wanted credit, they would say to their advisor or principal or guidance counselor, whomever, I'm going to do this many hours, et cetera, for my community service credit. But not every school has that requirement. It varies. We're not going to give the credit. We're just going to say, yes, they attended and participated. We're not reading their reports.
Cool, Betty.
Jessica?
No, I just like it.
Oh,
Jessica likes it. Thank you, Jessica.
thanks, Betty.
Thanks, Lenny.
Moving along with the agenda, item number 7. Is there any other executive committee business that we need to address? Carol Ann, Taya, am I missing anything? Okay. Moving on to the next item. Item number 8, community forum. This is where non-committee chairs or co-chairs have an opportunity to raise an item or discuss a topic. So we're in community forum. I remind everyone in community forum, we allot 2 minutes for each individual to speak or make a comment. And so I'm going to take a stab in the dark and guess that my very good friend John Dew has something to say. I could be wrong.
You're never wrong, Chair. You're never wrong.
Hey, John, how are you?
Good, good, good. I first wanted to report, and I'm going to try to be within 2 minutes. One of our board members, Samantha Johnson, was honored on Sunday at Fort Greene Park. A very wonderful event. Her speech was given by none other than Jabari Brisport. And I did not realize everything that Samantha Johnson was involved in. And after his speech, he led the community in an electric slide dance. And Mr. Chair Singletary, I was waiting for you to come and dance with him. Where were you?
I'm waiting for the remix.
If anybody wants to see the video, I have it on video. But the other items, and on a more serious note, is when we did the Farragut bike lane, what we find, Chair Singletary, is a constant problem with the city agencies is that they come into communities, specifically communities of color, and they've already mapped out whatever they want to do to the community. The Farragut community had alternatives for DOT, and DOT did not respond or react to those alternatives at all. That has become a constant refrain. It's the same issue with the sidewalk licenses, that they came up with a plan without consulting the community. When you had the discussion, some of the sidewalk cafes are in the street, others are on the sidewalk. So it does cover to committees. That is never actually discussed. So when these agencies come to us to ask us to approve something, they haven't consulted and they don't get it right. How can we address all of the agencies and let them know that the community boards are there to work with them to make their proposals better? They can't just continue to come in after sitting behind a desk and determine what is best for the community. The last item I have, if we return to in-person meetings, I would ask that, given that the community board members are unsalaried and use their own supplies for community board work, that if transportation is required for a community board member to attend a meeting, that the city or state look to reimburse a subway fare, a transfer of 2 subway rides to community board members who attend meetings. It could be done electronically.
So, I mean, that's a great suggestion. If it's any insight, I think when we, and I'm going to single out the borough president's office as an example. I think there are a lot of things that the various community boards engage that are unique to each community board. And a lot of times what I've learned is in this recent conversation we had where we all galvanized together to push for the continuation of virtual meetings, there were a lot of ideas that Borough Hall found revealing, but also supported. And so maybe when we have our district cabinet meetings or we have the Borough Hall meetings with all the community boards, we can, this particular topic, we can raise and see what the feedback is or what the notion is. What we've often encountered, and I think this is somewhat historical, is there are times when there's ideas and there's support for the idea, and then kind of the gray area, if you will, where people kind of use that as a justification is what budget is it coming from, and that's where it gets a little gray. But like I firmly believe, you ask the question, you push, and see what we can do. Maybe we can get a different thought process. But I think that's a point well raised. As it relates to the bike lane, and while we know that the Farragut community was highlighted in that one particular example, I think there are different examples where we don't necessarily get the right kind of collaboration and engagement with some of the agencies. And I think it's various agencies, while maybe more often than not for community board 2, it's DOT, but I think we have agencies that generally don't engage in the manner that we would desire to. And so I'll try to follow up and see if we can get some support from Borough Hall to help us get those initiatives started, because I do think it's a benefit to the entire community when the agencies and the community boards work together. And that seems to be more of a hurdle than a norm. I think it should be the reverse. So your points are both well taken.
The Farragut piece actually comes under what is the new lexicon of critical race theory, which says when new policies and laws and things are implemented, they generally turn out to not benefit communities of color as much.
Thanks for that. I see Sam, you have your hand raised. Did you want to talk about the dance or whatever the case is?
I did. I just wanted to take up the rest of the time to talk about how amazing it was and how we missed you, Lenny. And you owe us a dance.
Listen, you got it. No question.
We're gonna have all the icy hot and the Bengay ready. If that's the problem, no excuses.
I'm good. Trust me, I'm good. My golf game is good, and I'm still playing basketball, so we ready. We can dance it out. I'm not worried about that.
Right. But I appreciate it. Thank you, John, for that. I didn't want to talk about that though. I did want to speak a little bit about the NYCHA statement that was mentioned earlier from our fellow amazing colleagues. But I just wanted to highlight that the waiting list for NYCHA is over 160,000 individuals, whereas NYCHA does not have that many spots. I would want to see if we could try to work with the comptroller to do an investigative report on why those sites are not being filled and what that holdup could possibly be, knowing that the NYCHA application is extremely extensive and many people have dated back to the early 2000s in applications and have actually left because it's been over 20 some years in applying. So my recommendation or just suggestion would be, how can we work alongside the local property management and seeing if there's some type of influence or support we can give to open up that conversation about filling those vacancy spots before we just consider filling a spot without understanding the context for the special populations.
Good point. Good question. And I do want to take the time for those who don't know Samantha Johnson. When she's in in-person meetings, a lot of times she's quiet and she's to the side, but always a person that when she opens her mouth, you listen, and she's active, not only at community board, but all throughout the district and beyond. So, you know, I think kudos to Senator Brisport and whoever were the collective bodies to honor the work you do, because I've seen you do it firsthand. You know, a lot of times we do stuff, and I like to believe that all of us do the work, not looking to get accolades and pats on the back, but we do it because we care. And I think if that's the intent for what you do it for, you know, the plaque certificates, they'll come. You really are special. You can get a dance. And so, you know, credit to Samantha for the work that you do, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other non-committee members who have a point to raise for community forum? In fairness, I'm going to ask one more time. Any non-committee members who have a point to raise during community forum? Okay, great. Next item on the agenda is a motion to adjourn. Mr. Jordan, second. Mr. Gordon, is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Everyone have a good night. Get home safe if you aren't already home, and we'll see each other soon.
Take care. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Great
Good
meeting.
night. Thank you.